Everyone on this planet, yes, including you and me as well, have some kind of trauma trapped inside their body. Yes, unresolved trauma is not just about mental health. It actually is about overall well-being, and it can show up oftentimes as chronic illnesses. Yes, your shoulder pain, your neck pain, your back pain, or your gut function can actually be a problem of unresolved trauma. It also may strain your relationships and definitely holds you back to reach your fullest potential. Welcome to the Empower Hour. I'm Heike Fallon, your host, and my today's guest is Julie Thom. She is a trauma-informed health and movement coach with over 23 years of experience in helping her clients heal from trauma with an absolutely amazing approach. And she shares some great insights, particularly signs and symptoms of trauma, but also some strategies on how to get started and how to also recognize trauma. Because if you don't recognize that it's somewhere trapped in your body, then that's really hard to get started. So she shares her insights in today's episode. I want to welcome you, Julie. I'm excited you're here today because trauma really impacts everyone. Everyone has gone at some point to some trauma, if you may not even know it. But we have you here today as a specialist, and I'm excited because we have a couple things in common, actually.
Yeah.
I hate cold feet too.
Yeah.
But we have both absolutely believe in a holistic approach, particularly when it comes to long-term changing situations. Not just there's quick fixes, but they don't last. So they aren't really a fix. And we need to really address trauma and those type of things in a holistic approach, and you are absolutely amazing with that. So love to get started here. So let's first dive in with what is trauma, because most people think, and I've had that myself a long time ago, I'm like, oh yeah, it was like a huge traumatic one event and that's a trauma. But then I learned over the years that's not really it.
Right. So the definition that I'll use, or that I like to use, is basically trauma is an experience of threat, disconnection, isolation, or immobilization that results in chronic dysregulation of your nervous system, of your endocrine system, of your emotional body, your immune system, your heart, or your spirit, depending on whatever you believe, and you're living in a non-optimal state long term. So basically, if you've been feeling off, if if you've been sick, if you have some type of disorder, condition, dis-ease in your body, it's usually typically linked to some type of trauma. So essentially where it comes from, and like the groundwork for it, a lot of it comes from epigenetics. So a lot of the work, like there's more and more research now, but when we talk about, like why are people sicker now? Like we know, like my kids' longevity, they're gonna die sooner than I will. So why are we have more technology, we have more tools, like we're getting better, like cancer research, we're getting better at detection, but why are more people getting sicker? Why do more people have cancer than ever? And why are people just getting sicker, and why are there more like autoimmune disease?
Yeah.
Autoimmune, like how is it possible that there's what is it, 81 or 85 different autoimmune diseases? Like what is happening? And
Mm-hmm.
it for me, it comes down to some type of dysregulation or disconnection in your body, and there's a threat that you just don't feel safe in your body. So that's what it comes down to. So I try to, like for me, how it all started is that I was doing my doctorate and I basically had a nervous breakdown essentially. Like I woke up, I had pus coming out of my eyes, I had hives everywhere, I had eczema everywhere. I couldn't walk. My feet were like basically so cramped. It was like literally I was walking on like little nubs. And yeah, like my body was just like enough. And so I had to take a break and just figure out like, okay, what's going on? I blew my back out, so I couldn't walk. My shoulders, I was a swimmer, so I couldn't wash my hair. I used to have a stick shift. I couldn't drive my car. So I went and did all the appointments. I went to every appointment. I never missed a rep. I never missed an appointment. And I did all the things with all the people. And it's just like I would get better for a little bit. And then and then it would come back. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So this is where I was like, okay, I really need to start understanding what's happening in my own body, because when I was going to all those appointments, I was empowering the doctors and the therapists and the acupuncturists and all the people. I was empowering them with my own body. And so for me, the evolution came to, wait a second, what if I start like empowering myself? And so this is where kind of the evolution of understanding the body and how it heals and how the body naturally, it does want to heal. Like, believe it or not, your body doesn't want to feel like crap. It doesn't want to deal with
Wow.
dis-ease. It doesn't want to, have this dysfunction in your body. Like when you have pain, it's there because you don't feel safe. So when I talk about like trauma-informed movement, the biggest thing to understand is like so in my world, so I come from like an exercise, like, so my undergrad is kinesiology, my master's is in sports psychology. So with kinesiology and sports psychology, it's very like in a box. You do A, B, C. This is how it's done. And there's always a reason. It's black or white. Then in my doctorate, I went outside and I went philosophy of sport. And if you understand anything about philosophy, well, there's a
Like,
million reasons. The door just opens, and I'm like, because I realized when I was doing my master's, I realized that I'm like, I don't like this black or white. It's not this or that. There's got to be something else. And I've always felt that there's got to be something else, like the 50 shades of purple. So then when it comes to movement, and like when, again, I come from an athlete background, the way my performance and the way we performed it, there was a certain method, there was a certain way we had to do it this way. There wasn't a lot of options for how you performed. And that takes a toll on your body when you're told to do certain things certain ways at certain times, eat certain foods, move certain ways, like you're living in a box, and that takes a toll. And so I was a personal trainer for a really long time, and it was all about, like, okay, you're gonna, your form, shoulders back, abs on, like feet grounded, all that kind of stuff, right? And then I realized that for some people that was more painful, and for some people, this didn't really jive. So I'm like, okay, like, what I learned in a book and then you apply it to an everyday person, it doesn't land. I'm like, what's missing here? And what was missing is safety, is really helping somebody feel safer in their own body. And that, like, you can't compare, if two people come in with back pain, you can't compare them because there's a history. There's a story behind what's creating the back pain. So
yeah.
essentially it comes down to like the trauma informed aspect is really about how do I help somebody feel safer in their body, really.
And I love it. You already you said so many great things already, but there's no one size fits all.
No.
Period. And that's, I think, the biggest misunderstanding is like, yeah, not saying don't go to the doctor, but I've been to 7 and they couldn't figure it out until then I went ahead and went out of the scope with, what things are going, and figure it out on a more broader perspective. But the point is, there is no one size fits all. That's why it's not the physical therapist that might be great or not great because they're using the same program. It may have worked for one and may have not worked for the other. There is no one size fits all, and we need to really start with the individual in order to find the right path that works for them. So that goes down to for strategies, and we'll talk about that a little later, because not everything works for everybody. You need to figure out which one the right ones are. But so since we're talking trauma, like, what are usually the signs? Like, I mean, like, somebody may not, I mean, I had a traumatic event due to the first birth I gave to my son, who was big, and it just was a disaster. And I didn't realize it was a trauma at the time, like how bad it was, and until later. But I had all kinds of health issues due to what happened, and I fixed the health issues, but I didn't realize until later that was a traumatic event. but it's not always like that. So how do I know? I mean, I find with my clients, the biggest thing is that they think they're fine because
Hmm.
the system copes so well that
Hmm.
we think we're just fine. Oh, I got this.
Hmm. Yeah, because the reality is trauma is it's not the event, it's how you responded to the event, right? So what trauma really comes down to is, did you feel safe or not, right? And so a lot of times, like if you end up having to cope, like if you something like you got in a car accident, like two people can get in a car accident, one person be like they can walk away and nothing happened, the other person it's like they have nightmares and their body shudders and they can't get in another car, they can't be a passenger in a car again. So there's these physical reactions that happen to certain people. And so trauma really, like how do I know I have trauma is really, it comes into, you have to learn to listen to your body because your body's constantly giving you signals, but you're not listening to. And so this is the problem is like, so for me, for example, why, like I was like my body temperature, like why am I always cold? I never really understood like, oh my God, I hate doing like cold plunges and I hate the cold. I live in Canada. I'm like, why do I live here? I hate the winter. It's too cold here. But what I realized, the reason I'm cold is because it's stress. So in the winter, my stress level goes higher because A, we don't get enough sunshine. So I don't have enough vitamin D. B, I'm not like exposing myself to nature as much. My diet changes. I'm inside, so there are certain factors that it impacts my stress. So the seasons, like with I have 4 seasons here in Canada, so with the seasons, my stress level is impacted by that, and as a result, when I get really stressed, I get really cold. But I didn't know that, and so that's where it's like understanding, like if I don't get enough sunshine, that could be a stressor for me. So this is where, there are so many different signs, but it's understanding how your body responds in certain situations, right? But if we want to just talk about like what are signs of unresolved trauma, well, it could be simply like I feel tired all the time, or I have zero motivation, or you really get overwhelmed easily. So, like you go to Costco and you're just like, nope, I can't handle all these people. It's just, I can't people anymore. You feel irritable. Your sleeping is really bad. You basically you either struggle with falling asleep or you wake up in the middle of the night repeatedly. And when I say this, it's not like a one-off. I mean, it's like it's chronic. It's more than, you know, 3 months in a row that you're constantly, staying awake and you just can't sleep. You get a lot of headaches, or migraines is a really popular one. A lot of gut health issues. So if you have IBS, Crohn's, celiac, anything like that, that's a sign of unresolved trauma. You procrastinate a lot, you struggle with self-doubt, or you feel like you don't have any self-worth, or you're a constant people pleaser. These are all signs of unresolved trauma. So it's essentially, there's lots of different signals depending on the person, but it's really, like I kind of, have you ever watched Fight Club before? Have you seen that movie? No? So in Fight Club, the funny part about Fight Club is that there's one rule in Fight Club. Nobody talks about Fight Club. Okay? Where for me, when we talk about Healing Club, the first rule of Healing Club is we want to talk about it, but if we're going to talk about it and we're going to like bring it really comes down to bringing awareness too. We really have to be able to have awareness of what's actually happening in our minds, in our body. So are you that person that constantly ruminates? Like you get it, like you're driving or you always forget, like my husband will be driving somewhere and he forgets to turn off because he's stuck in his head. That could be, or you like forget where you put your keys. These are all signs that your body is constantly scanning the environment because it doesn't feel safe. This could be a sign of trauma, dysregulation trapped in your body because it's always like scanning. So this is where we want to have, it always comes down to awareness, and we want to be able to have awareness of how does our body respond in certain environments.
Yeah, and I mean, I've shared that in other episodes, like our brain tries to always predict to keep us safe. And
Yes.
so it's kind of a little easier, let's say, like example with your car accident example there. Yeah, you feel that, right? Like the heartbeat goes faster and you get in the
Mhm.
car and you're nervous about it, or plane rides or something like that, then you feel it. pretty like a little more obvious, but oftentimes it's very settled.
Yes.
And to learn to actually recognize it, I think one big thing is a lot of the signs you just mentioned overlap with other things, but
Absolutely.
essentially everything is correlated. So even if we're talking, oh, you have this maybe because of hormone changes, you do get the headaches and you might feel this and that, and it overlap. But yes, but hormones is a dysregulation too. And so, and it might be also more dysregulated because of possibly trauma you had. Who knows, right? Because it's all, love your dog coming through there. All really intertwined. So keeping in mind too, and knowing that, hey, maybe there is a trauma that happened, or things are happened over time more frequently to me, or to, not to me, you shouldn't say to me, right? They don't happen to me, that I experienced actually, and that uh to try kind of like go back into it. But oftentimes that's difficult alone, because you don't to get that perspective. So I know you're coaching. I'm coaching as well, but not specifically on trauma, but a lot comes out through the questions I ask my clients.
Right.
But what are typical questions you ask?
In terms of,
To kind of bring out if there is a certain trauma, or how do we recognize it when it's not the typical heartbeat and I don't want to get in the car kind of thing.
it's a good question. It depends on the person, honestly, because a lot of times when I meet with somebody, honestly, because they know I'm a trauma informed coach, they usually have some type of something like it'll usually it's a condition, some type of, like I have chronic back pain. I have
Yeah.
chronic back pain. So that's where I started. A lot of my, it was like, so I come from personal training background, and also I worked in a physio clinic. So frozen shoulder. Okay. So when I look, so the way I look at frozen shoulder is that yes, there's a physical aspect, but there's also an emotional aspect. So this is where I'm like, so I often ask, I'm like, okay, what are your triggers?
Hmm.
I don't know what my triggers are. Okay, so that right there, I'm like, okay, so then that's where I'm like, we
Yeah.
don't even have awareness of how my body responds in space, right? So when it comes to trauma, it'd be like, is there ever a time that you can remember where I'll use the word safe, you didn't feel safe? Did you, like when you were a kid, was there anything like, did you have a shelter over your head? Did you have enough water? Did you have enough food? How are you with relationships?
Hmm.
So like relationships is a big indicator as well. Like, do you have a secure relationship? Like, do you do things for yourself, or do you do things for other people? Were you a caretaker when you were a child? Like, did you have to, like, you're the oldest child, did you have to take care of all your other siblings? So these are all signs to me, like if you had to grow up fast,
Mm-hmm.
you're a people pleaser. Like I joke, but I really am. I'm a recovering people pleaser. So like I do things, like the reason I went to school for a really long time is because I was pleasing my parents, because
Mm-hmm.
they thought that's how I thought they would love me, by me educating myself even more. So there's just certain things that, like, okay, what are things that you do that that frustrate you, right? So like what are some habits that you have that that you want to change? So it comes down to like, so it's hard to like, it'd be hard to like pinpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I need a more specific example, but it's hard to pinpoint. But if you just take a look at, okay, if we just go with the like the F's, the finances, your friendships, and your fitness. Okay, so if we just go with those three main categories, when people are trying to heal and trying to get better in their lives, they're going to focus on one of the three F's, right? I want to get better. I want to improve my fitness levels. If you are someone that has been doing this fitness thing for a while and trying to work out and trying to eat better and trying to do this, and you're not losing weight, or you keep getting hurt, I'm telling you right now, you have trauma stuck in your body.
Yeah.
That's a sign.
Yeah.
If you are somebody that struggles with finances, if you're somebody that you can't, like, you're always spending money and you're always like, you can barely make one, like make it month to month. You're always spending money, like you got money in your pocket, you got to go, like it's burning, I got to go spend it, or you have a hard time like saving it and whatnot. that could be a sign that you have trauma. And then also with your friendships, what type of friendships do you have? Do you have a lot of friends? Are they like just superficial friendships? Do you have a really good bond? What's your relationship with your parents? So when we take a look at the 3 F's, that really helps us hone in on, okay, which category are you trying to help yourself? And if you're struggling and you can't get, like, you've been doing something, you've been doing the readings, you've been, you hired a coach, or, you've been doing work towards it and things just aren't clicking,
Mhm.
that's a sign you have trauma stuck in your body.
Yeah, I love that. And behaviors right there. Those are whatever behaviors, or we need to, peel the onion on the behaviors and find out why are the behaviors happening. And one big thing, since my background is as a neurosports therapist, and I'm also a certified high performance coach, which is not sports performance, but personal performance. But we always use the saying of who treats the site of pain is lost, because
Yes.
unless, I always say, unless you played soccer, somebody kicked you in the knee hurts because there is an ACL rupture, yes, we go to the doctor, we have an x-ray and we have to take a look at it. But if your knee, maybe you had something going on or not before surgery, or not, or event, not whatever, but it should heal. And if it's not healed and it's sometimes good, I can do all the stuff, and sometimes I can't, that is your sign that the knee is not the problem and it's coming from somewhere else. And a lot of times it's not related to any physical thing, especially when it comes back, shoulder stuff. We know there's a lot of referred pain patterns. And that's why I got into the high performance coaching, so the personal performance coaching, because I gave, like you said, and for myself as well, due to my history. But you can do all these exercises and do them really well, consistency. But if you're not changing some things in your life and you dig a little deeper, what's going on? What makes you unhappy? What makes you happy? What is your goal? What's your purpose? What's your vision? If you don't have those things anymore, and that's what I struggled with back then, I was just focused on healing my body, that I
Mhm.
completely was into how do I survive tomorrow, and I completely lost a bigger vision, a bigger purpose. I mean, yes, I was serving my clients, I have beautiful kids, and I was taking care of my kids, as in addition to trying to survive the next day due to my pain. But it wasn't until I actually went even broader with like a vision and having a purpose again, that actually shifted my healing process,
Mhm.
interestingly enough, the physical part. So it can't be separated. It needs to be
Mhm.
all put together. And that's when I started, okay, I need to get certified more and learn more about how can I integrate that. Because as you said, if you've done your physical therapy and it's just not changing, it's something else, and it's more and more, which I love. And if you could share a little bit more about it, because it's not just movement, isn't just exercising.
No.
Movement, like you mentioned earlier, the lymph system is so important. The vagus nerve is important. There's lots of other systems that need to be addressed, not just working out in the gym with some strength stuff, or doing your, yes, do that, do your walking, do your running, bike riding, swimming, whatever you do. But if you're really struggling and haven't really resolved and dealt and cope with the trauma, more likely you have to address other systems.
Correct. So I think where people get hung up is that, like, when we talk about exercise, first of all, when we talk about, like, one of the biggest things when we talk about trauma is we have to talk about perception.
Hmm.
Okay. So because if your perception is a certain way, that may be hindering why you aren't getting better. So when we talk about exercise, for example, like I say the word exercise, what's the first word that comes to your mind? Most people, it's like sweat, hard, a hit style. For me, it's like punishment. It hurts, right? It's painful. But when we talk about movement, it's really about like I can move in any way I want. It's more so it's almost like this masculine feminine energy type of thing where exercise is more like you do it this way, where movement, I'm like, I can choose how I do it. Absolutely. And there's no rules. There's no right or wrong. And I think unfortunately, I mean, like look at kids in school. We're taught how to do things right or wrong. And it's there, we're not often allowed to make mistakes and allowed to explore and allowed to be curious. Like all of a sudden, it's like as a child, like we get to be curious, we get to play, we get to do different things with our bodies, with our minds, with art and all this stuff. But then as you get to high school, that creativity starts to like dim and go away because you have to like, no, you gotta take these classes to be able to get here. And then it's like it's all about the systematic approach to like being successful. And so it's like this perception of success. We can't just move. We can't just do things and go with the flow and do things that honor us. Well, that's not going to make you successful. And so I'm here to stand up and say, we can change that. We can change that perception and we can do things a little bit different. So for me, the movement piece really came in while I was working with a trauma coach, and then her big thing was, Julie, we need to help you embody your feminine. And I'm like, embody my who? I didn't know what that was. Like, I'm like, what? I don't get it. And so I'm like, how do I do that? And she's like, that's not really how we approach it. Because it's like when you want to be feminine, and I mean, I'm not talking about feminine female,
Yeah.
I'm talking about feminine energy. So
Yeah.
this is where it really opened the door. And I think when I was doing my doctorate, I kind of had this idea of, I knew there was a different way to heal and a different way to work with people. And so anyway, so I encourage you to explore going with the flow and just allowing you to move your body. And this is where, if you check out my social media, you'll see there was a transition a couple years ago with me dancing more and just doing movements and not doing things systematically, just like doing things that felt good, that were gentle, that were kind, that weren't punishing, like literally just massaging my ears
Yep.
is movement, right? And these are simple things like lymphatics. Like if you understand the lymphatic system, it's like it's so gentle and it just flows and it's ease. And but so many people attack it like we got to rebound and we got to jump up and down and we got to like tap and pound and vibrate it and blah 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 blah. It's just this, there's so much intensity behind it where I'm like, whoa, we're living life really intense right now. And I think this is what's contributing to the dis-ease that we're feeling. So it's like, okay, so what type of movements, I encourage people, what type of movements that can like dial things back a little bit for you that just feel good? What did you do when you were a kid that allowed you to be curious, right? So it's just different things that we can do, like I don't know, it's more ease, it's more flowy. And so this is where people think like yoga, qigong, tai chi. Sure, for some people they love it. That's great, right? Some people it might be dance. Like I tried Zumba,
Mm-hmm.
didn't work for me. It's too choreographed. I'm like, I can't follow. I'm like, they're going right, I'm going left, and I'm the blah, 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 blah. And then I feel like a schmuck because I can't follow it. And I'm like, I should know this stuff. I'm like, I'm an athlete, or I wasn't, well, I'm an athlete, sure. I'm like, everybody's an athlete in my book, but
Everybody's an athlete.
absolutely, everybody's an athlete. So the way I look at it is like, why can't like I felt shame because I'm like, why can't I follow this person? And it's just, like there's something wrong with me cognitively. So I'm like, I want to encourage people that there's no right or wrong way to do movement, to practice feeling good about who you are inside. So when I talk about exercise or when I talk about the physical aspects of healing, so the way I look at it is it's a scale. So on the one side, we have the mental and the physical aspect. So a lot of people, they try to like get better mentally and physically, like you Joe Dispenza, like you just think yourself better, right? You just like, I'm gonna think myself positive affirmations until I'm blue in the face, like the mantras and all, like I'm gonna do this, whatever you think you become. I used to like, I tried it, but for me, it didn't work because I fake it till you make it didn't work for me. My nervous system's like, ha ha, ha, I know you're lying. So I'm
Nice
like,
try,
no,
good joke.
right? So in my nervous, but this is where I started understanding that, okay, there are 11 organ systems that are all working together and they all need to talk to each other. But who's the main instrument? Who is the main conductor? Who is the main organ system that they all listen to? It's the nervous system. And so when you understand that, okay, there's a nervous system, but then when you look at all the other organ systems, so you got your endocrine system, muscular system, the skeletal system, the lymphatic system, your endocrine system, like we have all these systems, all of them, just think of like the nervous system as like, if you have an orchestra, you have the like the lead instrument that everybody tunes to, right? So your nervous system is the lead instrument, like the lead violin, and everybody else is then tuning themselves to what that nervous system is. But what happens if that lead instrument is out of tune?
Yep. Nope.
It's going to make all the other systems out of tune. So then we're all supposed to be playing this A note, but then we're actually playing C. Well, what that's going to do is create this disorder and chaos in our bodies. Then that's where it's like, oh, there's this structure like, well, we got to get things right. It's got to be done this way, this way, this way, this way. And like, no, all we have to really do is take a look at the nervous system and retune, like you said, the vagus nerve. We got to retune the main instrument, the nervous system. And once we get that, then we can put all the other systems in place, right? And so that's why for me, this is where trauma got impacted. Like we know through epigenetics, it impacts your nervous system. And so
Yeah,
the
and
stuff that happens in your brain,
actually can change it too if you're not taking
100% you
care.
can.
If you're not taking care of it, that is another thing. If you're not taking care of it, the longer you're not taking care of it, the more it can manifest and change things. So,
Absolutely.
so
That's the
it,
cool thing. We have neuroplasticity, right?
yes,
Like, the whole thing is you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, we know that's not true. So this
yep,
is where like you can literally fire neurons when you learn new things. And so this is where the movement aspect comes in, is that we're learning new ways to move our bodies. Because if you look at a baby, how does a baby explore the world? Through movement. That's what it learns. Like, so we have primal movements, some like from the squatting to the rolling to all the different, push, pull, all these type of things. This is how a baby learns in its environment. It puts things in its mouth. It's all this sensory things. It's the proprioceptive. So for whatever reason, like parents put like shoes on their kids and then basically, like force them like, oh no, don't do this, or they don't let them be curious. That will create some dysfunction in the systems because it's not allowed to do what it's intended to do,
yeah,
right?
it's
And
not
that
getting
creates
all the extroception, like all the information
yeah,
we're getting from all our senses.
exactly.
We don't, if you put shoes on and not walking barefoot, you're losing a lot of information coming in, as I say.
Exactly.
Yes, but which comes back to the nervous system, right? We want
Yep.
the more information we have coming in and the more it learns to deal with the different information, the better. So yes, if the kid's wearing shoes too early, or otherwise, if you're wearing shoes all the time, unless yes, you might have something going on with your foot, don't, then you might have to wear them a little bit more. Otherwise, so it's really good to walk barefoot and take the socks off, even not with socks on, ideally. But it's all about information coming into the brain
Yep.
and stimulating the nervous system. As you said, the nervous system orchestras everything else.
Mhm.
And the problem is too, I want to go back to that really quick. What happens is when something is out of tune or not getting enough stimulus or activation, like the vagus nerve or the vestibular system, so the inner ear, because of lack of movement, for example, because that stimulates the inner ear. But once that's out of it's not having, as you said, it's not in tune, and the other systems now trying to actually adjust to it, and now
Mhm.
they're not in tune. Now
Mhm.
actually there's a complete mismatch happening between
Correct.
information coming, and that's also when we don't really feel then, well, what do I feel? Because I can't feel anymore because everything is out of tune.
Correct.
But now then I don't feel a heart rate going up, or I don't feel that I'm tense. Oftentimes I have clients, I'm like, yeah, no, you can relax the shoulders now. Oh, I am. I'm like, okay, let's try this. Let's do a breathing drill. And we're going to talk about
Mhm.
that. Saying, let's do a breathing drill. And like, oh, okay. That's what's relaxed shoulders means, right? So
Mhm.
they don't even feel anymore how tight they are.
Right.
And because that's just became normal,
Mhm.
and the new normal isn't necessarily healthy. Just because you don't feel your shoulders, oftentimes they may not even have neck pain, but they don't even
Right.
realize, oh, you know what, they're up there. So breathing drills are also fantastic. And I know
Mhm.
there's a lot of different ones. Any comment on that? What you're
Yeah.
sorry.
I mean, I always have lots to
That's an
say. I
extra
mean, I
episode
think
technically.
well, I think what's important for people to understand is that 80% of your nerve fibers are from your body to your brain. So like 300 years ago, some white guy basically said the brain and body were separate. And so what's important to understand that your nerve fibers, 20% go from your brain to your body. But this is what all of the research for the last like, well, basically 250 years or so has been really focused on. Let's fix the brain. The brain is simply an interpreter. It's not actually making decisions. The body is the one that makes the decision because it's based on the sensory input. So when we need to help people get into their body or befriend their body, we need to get them out of their head. But this is all they've been doing their whole life. They've been stuck in survival. Survival, like being in my head, is what helps me live, right?
Mhm.
And so breathing is a perfect way to bridge that or open that door to connecting with your body, because you can literally shift it. Because the thing is, when you're in survival, you're in something called fight or flight or sympathetic. You're in a sympathetic aspect of your nervous system. So what happens is you get caught in this loop. But what we want to do is be able to create this break in the loop to get us into a parasympathetic, rest and digest, or tend and befriend. So then the more opportunities we give our nervous system to get into this parasympathetic state, this is where healing can happen. We cannot heal in a state of protection. You can't heal when you're in survival. You can't heal when you're in the sympathetic nervous system. So this is where like, why am I not achieving my goals? Why am I not, getting where I want? If you're the manifester, if you're that spiritual person, why am I not getting the things I'm manifesting? Because you're stuck in survival. You have these blockages. We have this energetic blockage. So breathing is a wonderful way to do that. The only thing is there's a caveat when we talk about trauma, because depending on your story, depending on your nervous system, there are certain breathing drills that can actually be more stressful for you. So someone, for instance, like the typical, like if you ever watched like the Navy SEALs are like box breathing. Hands down, got to do box breathing. If you want to be a Navy SEAL, you got to do box breathing. But I can tell you, box breathing for some people is super stressful because holding their breath is too stressful. So this is where we really need to explore and understand, like, okay, what type of breathing do I do, right? So I'm like, let's just, a really easy one to find out, are you stressed right now, is do a horse breath. You know,
Mhm.
horse breath?
Yeah.
So you do with your lips. Can you do it? Yes or no? And if you can't, that's an indication that you're a little bit more stressed. Can you do it with your cheeks? A little bit harder, right? So this is where it's like, okay, a little bit stressed. So what can I do to help me calm down, right? So this is where we focus on longer exhales. So the big thing is that I'm not, again, because I focus more on the movement and I want to encourage you to, like, I am a coach, so I will coach you, but I need, again, through those questions that I'm asking, like a little bit of your history, what type of breathing resonates with you? Do you like to hold your breath, or does that make you feel a bit more anxious? And what does that mean? Well, it means that you feel that tightness. Do you feel tightness? Do you feel that pit in your stomach? Does, you feel that tightness in your chest? Do your shoulders? Does your neck hurt? Does your jaw get tight? So this is where, like, through Andrew Huberman, like his research and all the stuff that he talks about, the psychological sigh is
Mhm.
one of the best ones to help shift somebody super quick, because you just inhale again, and let it go. A big sigh, right? So I like that one as well. Some of the people I work, they're like, nope, I don't like that. I don't like that tension. I don't feel like that tension. Okay. So this is where it's really important. Again, it comes down to awareness. It all comes down to what type of like breathing. So this is why we have so many different assessments under the sun. Like we could
Yeah.
sit here and do a whole other podcast or a whole other talk on just what breathing drill works better for me and how do I assess it. Like the Bolt test, right? So the Bolt test. So basically your breath oxygen level test. Some people, just to give you a gauge of where you're at, or how many breaths do you take in a minute? That's a great way just to start having that awareness. I'm like, if you're breathing between 12 and 18 times in a minute, I can tell you right now, you're living in survival. I can
Yep.
tell you right now. The other one that I like to do, so when I work with people, I like to use what's called a side door approach to healing. It's a psychosomatic, meaning mind and body. So it's not just a bottom up approach where we get into the body and really help us attune, or top down approach. I like the psychosomatic. So it's really grabbing underneath your sternum, like underneath your rib cage, and just holding your fingers there, and just go ahead and take an inhale in to the fingers and exhale. And is it tender? Yes or no? If it is, that's a sign that your body's stuck in a survival state or in some stress. So what we want to do is just keep your hands there with a little bit of heat with the hands, a little bit of pressure on the hands, is that we can just hold it there and focus on a longer exhale. That helps people shift. Like one of the videos that actually helped me go viral is the 6 healing sounds. Personally, I think it's a beautiful way to help people understand like energetically where I may have some blockages.
I'm
But
gonna
that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna link that below. So also your information is below. So for anybody who wants to check out Julie's YouTube channel, as well as she's on Instagram and all the other platforms. So all the information is below. Because there are a lot of great videos, great exercise videos, and a lot of more detailed information. So please check that out. So information is below. But the key is to really understand we're not all the same. And just because somebody tells you box breathing is the thing because it got so popular for some reason, I agree with you. It got so popular, not everybody can do it. For some people, it's a stress response. So we need to really evaluate which one is right for you. There's different assessments. I do different assessments as well, but the key is there is no one size fits all, and nobody needs to feel bad that you can't do box breathing. It's okay. There's so many different breathing drills. The key is the end result should be you feeling better. The
That's
end
right.
result should be that it relaxes you, as far as breathing drills, unless you're doing one for energizing. There's some
Exactly.
energizing exercises too, of course.
Fire breath. Yeah.
So there's those as well, but breathing drills are fantastic. A fantastic tool to really, like you said, shift quickly out of survival mode and then actually start doing all these other things, because affirmations are great, but if they're not working for you, then maybe you need to do something else first, or they just don't work for you and you'll find something else. I did a video and it did not go viral. I'm actually really bummed it had so little views. Is nature. Nature is so important, and not just for the well-being and all that, but for trauma, it's tremendously important. We need nature. Share a little bit about that, because I know you're always in nature and I love it.
Yes.
I'm hopefully eventually I mean, I moved from Germany to California, to be honest. When people ask me, why did you move? I'm like, I wanted to walk barefoot all year round because I hate cold feet. And people didn't get it. I'm like, no, I want to just be where it's warm, but I'm ready to, I didn't want to be where I'm at. It just happened I met my husband and we stayed, but we will be moving more into where I want to be in the mountains and more more. I'm not so much a beach person, though, even though I'm so close to it, but I don't like the left and right go. I like mountains.
There you
So
go.
I'm excited for that. But nature, I seek it all the time as much as I can, because I love it and it relaxes me. But we know nature has a profound impact and can be really aiding the healing process even faster.
Absolutely. There's so much research that shows it. And essentially nature, the way I look at it, or the way I explain it, it's an energy exchange. So like when you go to the mountains or when you're in the forest, like forest bathing, it's a whole thing. When you go to the ocean, even just walking if you go in the water or just in the sand, it's an energy exchange. So when we're there, first of all, like when you talked about the hierarchy with the vestibular system, at the top of the hierarchy is your eyes.
Yep.
So when you're in nature, your eyes are doing what's called a saccade. They're moving your eyes left to right. And when you do that, so if you know anything about trauma, anybody who's been traumatized, what happens is that there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, and that amygdala basically is like, it's a fire alarm. So when you go in nature, that natural fire alarm, that wah, wah, wah of fight or flight, when you go in nature, that it shuts down because you're doing a saccade. So this is why it's so encouraging that, like, if you just, even if you look at pictures, like you'd say you can't get there, like you live in the middle of the city or whatever, even if you look at it, your eyes are naturally going to do a saccade because you're looking at different parts of the picture that create a saccade that basically turn off the amygdala, which basically turns off your fire alarm, which then allows you to get into a more relaxed state. So it really comes down to energy and how to support the brain to feel safer when you go into nature. So I'm like, I'm a huge nature lover, absolutely. And it's because of it feels good, and you're offloading energy. You're matching the energy of the earth around you.
Love it, love it. Now you have a new program you started. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, so Restoring Balance is a course to get people started on trauma-informed movement. So it's really an opportunity for you to practice gentle ways to move your body using a variety of modalities. So I do vagus nerve, I do lymphatics, I do some somatics, I do some meditations. There's some gentle movement flows. So if you've done a little bit of like mobility, a little bit of yoga, I actually check in on your chakras to know what chakra energy, if you're blocked. So it's an intro course. It's basically, it's a self-paced course. There's like I think there's over 35 videos, and you get lifetime access. And it's my essential, it's like my gift to the world to show them a little bit of there is another way to heal. So for me, it's really about empowering people to feel better in their own bodies. And like, if you are that person, you want to get better, like, if you're on this healing path, you have appointments with different professionals. The way I look at my job is basically, I'm like, I want to support you between your appointments with those professionals. So you're not going to the professional to tell you, oh, you have to do XYZ. What you're doing is that you're supporting yourself in between by, I call them movement snacks. So essentially, what are the movement snacks that you're offering yourself every day to nurture, to nourish, to take care? Like you said, like you mentioned purpose earlier, like what are you doing every day to live your purpose? And for me, because movement is how we express ourselves in the world, how do you connect with your purpose using movement? And that's what I'm offering you, different ways to do that within this course.
I love it. Information is below too. So here's the thing though. Yes, you might think now everybody watching this, like, okay, yes, I know I had traumatic events. This is the thing I'm going to have to get into. But really, we want to prevent it too. We can
Yeah.
get more resilient by doing these things like your course, even if you don't feel like you have anything going on you're not aware of and you think you're feeling fine. I highly encourage, yes, train your eyes, train your vestibular system, work with your lymphatic system, work with your vagus nerve, do your breathing exercises, do any movement and things anyways, because if your system generally functions better, or as you said, the orchestra is playing well,
Yes.
we can actually, when some traumatic event happens, and it will in some kind of form,
Mhm.
if it even if you had it, that's also a misconception. People think you only get one, but it can happen more often.
Yep.
You have a better chance to cope with it and reset
Recover.
yourself faster when you've done these exercises already previously, because then you already know them, your system knows how to do it, and you can actually reset your system much faster and get it back on track, um, in any of those cases. Now, is there anything else that you would share for prevention?
I think you hit the nail on the head, honestly. So that's where, like, I agree with you. Prevention is huge. Like, our medical system, even in Canada and the US, it's always reactionary. So this is an opportunity for you to go on offense instead of playing defense. So this is your body, your life, your opportunity to sit in the driver's seat instead of the back seat, really, of your own life, and that you're not relying on your doctor to decide, like, okay, you're going to go on this pill or you're going to take this medication. Like, no, no, no. Like, there are ways to get, like, my dad and I have shared this a lot in our podcast, that it is possible to get off medications. And by doing these my dad calls them basic treatment guidelines. I call them basic healing guidelines. There's just certain things that we can do that are free. But the thing is, it's finding the self-worth that, when you know your purpose, and when you know that you're worth it and you are capable and you are enough, then you're able to, like, yeah, of course I'm going to go walk in nature. Of course I'm going to do some deep breathing. Of course, this is just part of who you are. So it's an evolution, and we're here to support you, and that's what our message is really about, is like, you can take your power back, and you are definitely worth it.
Yes, and it does take, not to put it rosy there, it's not happening overnight. If you've been dealing with
No.
something, it took me years. So it does sometimes take a little longer depending on what your history is, and please don't jump off, don't take medication anymore. That doesn't work either. So do it obviously under a medical guidance, but know that the goal should usually be, not for everybody, but most of my clients didn't really have to be on all of the medication they were on, and especially we transitioned out of them by doing specific movements and integrating certain habits into daily life. You can shift, because
Yep.
they wanted to put me on male medication. I said no, I'm going to find a different way. I've had plenty of people had surgeries, they didn't need the surgeries, it didn't fix anything. So being more proactive on your own of the things you can do. And like you said, a lot of it's free and much cheaper than than a lot of the other medication stuff. So,
Takes your time.
but
Yeah,
it
it just
does
takes
take
some
time
time.
to transition, and it is a journey. But as you said, we're here to help, and we're here to, and there's lots of resources, but you also do need community, you need support. So if you don't have that directly within your direct community, there's people like Julie definitely doing that a lot, specifically for trauma. I do it also for mine is more the general self leadership, and I do sometimes refer out for specialized cases, because certain people need something a little bit more than it needs to be, because we can't be experts on all of these things, because essentially we need to address it from all angles. And sometimes if somebody needs one thing more, then we need to, go look deeper into that to get the right activation and being more proactive. Thank you, Julie. This was so amazing. I hope everybody listening to this really understand that there's so much more you can do in order to heal from trauma, but also do things preventative, because it's your well-being, your health. It's not just trauma. All of these exercises that I know you share and I share are things that help you with your overall well-being and for your resilience and your productivity, and for like being more happy in life, and you're actually enjoying life more to the fullest. Because if you are carrying some baggage and you're constantly in survival mode, it's just no fun. So so we want to have fun in life. We can go
That's
dancing.
it. Go dance, go have fun, go move, go explore, go be
Go,
curious.
yes, thank you, Julie.
Thank you.